Oh, no, in mayhem. What an interesting thing. Okay, can somebody confirm you can hear me?
I can hear you.
Thank you. Let me see where I am. Here we go. Let's share my screen. Come on. All right, you should be able to see my screen now. Before we begin, are there any questions? All right, let's begin. I'm trying to call up my syllabus. There it is. So I think what I'll start with is you guys are here, so I don't need to show you how to log into the course. Although I can show you a simple way if you don't know, you should be able to click on the Zoom meeting. And then you have to close that down. And then hopefully you'll have a micro lecture and a micro lab. I don't know what yours will say, join maybe, and then leave maybe. Why is that saying start if I've already started it? I don't know. Let me first begin to talk about the class. If you do look at the class, there's a lot up. This is the general page, which you get from home or modules. I've got a note there you should read. There's a link to the syllabus. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. If you need help, especially with Canvas or with getting the Respondus Lockdown browser to work on your computer, you really shouldn't expect help from me because I don't know how to get Respondus Lockdown browser working on your computer. You need Respondus Lockdown browser to take all the quizzes. So what you should do is click on this link for student and technical help, and it has a whole bunch of places where you can get help, including from the IT computer department, which I like to call the computer help desk. And anyways, if your Respondus Lockdown browser is not working on your computer, you probably all you need to do is change a setting or two on your computer to get Respondus Lockdown browser then working. Generally speaking, I have one student every other term who Respondus Lockdown browser does not work on their computer. And so far, everyone has always gotten the Respondus Lockdown browser to work on their computer if they follow the directions that the computer help desk has given to them. They're experts for getting Respondus Lockdown browser working on your system. And so you should contact them. You should let me know that you're having a difficult time. But like I said, I will not be able to tell you what to do to change the settings. They are experts at that. And like I said, in all my years of teaching with the Respondus Lockdown browser, I've only had one student who never got it to work. And this student wasn't taking my advice and following it. So I have a feeling she was not taking the computer help desk advice either. And so that's probably the reason why she never got it working on her system. There's a link for how you can modify your Canvas site. That way you can just get a notification, like if I make an announcement or I grade an assignment. There's a link to my YouTube site. If you are not attending the live Zoom session, you may view the class later. And how to get to it is link on my YouTube site. And there's nothing up now, but I will, when this class is over with, I will put up the site on my YouTube site. And it won't happen immediately because Canvas requires, not Canvas, Clark College requires, oh, what is it, subtitles for what's stated. And it'll take YouTube a while to put up the subtitles. So the earliest it will come up will be a half hour after I submit it. And it might be longer, and then I might not submit it directly after the class also. But you click there and you'll get to the YouTube site. But you can see what's available from last term, for example. MicroLab Tuesday, Thursday at 7 p.m. on March 14th. Some notes about Zoom. This is the invite that you were emailed. And you can get into Zoom directly just by going to www.zoom.com and then putting in your class credentials and then the password, which is micro. There's some other interesting information. I don't want to talk about it, but like I said, if you're having trouble with the lockdown browser, I've got a link here about lockdown browser, what's required, download instructions. Once installed, guidelines, and then getting help. Like I said, call the computer help center, the tech hub, and get help from them. Generally, I think it'll just be one setting that needs to be changed on your computer, and somebody has changed your computer so that the lockdown browser would not work. Generally, the lockdown browser works on most people's computers. But like I said, one student every other term has trouble with it. If you don't have the textbook, you will need to get it, but I have a link to the first 3 chapters of the textbook and then the chapter summaries for all the other chapters that we're going to be using. And that's online. But you will need to eventually get the textbook. And then there's 2 assignments that need to be completed. Actually, 3 assignments that need to be completed this week. The first is the avoiding the plagiarism tutorial. This is something that the Clark College Library has made, teaching you about plagiarism, how important plagiarism is. And let me just state that it actually forced President Biden to end his first presidential campaign, which was in 1987. What he did was he made a speech, and he got the speech from a friend in Britain who was a British politician, and he just stated it like it was his own. And somebody got him on it, and he had to suspend his presidential campaign in 1987. There was a sitting senator, I think it was a senator from Nebraska, who plagiarized when he was working in graduate school. And this U.S. senator was forced to resign his office. So plagiarism is really important. It's especially important in school. If you do plagiarize on any assignment, and that is using 3 words from somebody else, and you don't put those words in quotes and then state where you got it from, that is plagiarizing. If you do plagiarize on assignment and I find it, you will get a 0 for that assignment. And let me tell you that there are 2 major assignments in this class which will be checked for plagiarism. And I don't need to do anything. have you submit it to turn it in, and then they check it for me. And they're actually quite good, where previous assignments that students have turned in, it will check to make sure that you're not plagiarizing a previous assignment submitted to Clark College. And I don't know how they do that. They must keep a record of everything that's been submitted to Clark College, because none of this stuff is online. But like I said, if ever you are using 3 or more words from somebody else, you need to put it in quotes and say where you got it from, or it is plagiarizing. I'll let you read about that. And I talked about that. Oh, after the tutorial, you then need to take the Plagie quiz. You must finish the tutorial before you can take the Plagie quiz. This quiz will count for 20 points. You must get 100% on the Plagie quiz. However, you can take the quiz more than once. So if you don't get 100%, just take it again. I don't remember how many times you can take it. You got 7 attempts. Nobody's ever taken it more than 3 times. Usually students get 100% on the second time, but most students get 100% on the first time. And I've only had like 1 or 2 students who needed a third time. It will be the same questions on the second attempt, but if you do not get 100% on this Plagie quiz, then the what is it? The infectious disease project, which is worth 100 points, you get 0 points on the infectious disease project if you don't get 100%. Any questions about the Plagie quiz? This quiz must be done by Saturday of this week. It must be finished by 11:59 p.m. There are 2 other assignments that need to be completed by this week. There are 2 lab assignments. I'll talk about them in the lab. A worksheet for lab 00, a worksheet for lab 01 or 1, and they must be completed by 8 a.m. Friday morning, or you will be dropped from the class. This is be the only time I'm taking attendance, and that will be students who are submitting worksheet lab 00 and worksheet lab 01. And like I said, if they're not submitted on time, you will be dropped from the class. And that reminds me, is there somebody here who has not added the class and they want to add the class? Please speak now so I can record your name. All right, there's nobody here. I thought I had a link for recording somebody. All right, there were 2 students who emailed me, and that's why I'm asking. And I guess they're not here, so they're not going to add the class. The class is currently full, but if somebody were to drop by Friday, I would add them. And I was going to allow 1 extra student into the class. All right, you scroll down a little further, you'll come into week 1 lecture. In here, I've got an overview and the objectives to the lesson for chapter 1. And in chapter 1, we're also going to talk a little bit about chapter 10. So it'll start with the objectives for chapter 1. And this will be, every quiz question will come from an objective. So if you can answer all of the objectives, you should do well on the quizzes. It's chapter 10's objectives. Let me go back. Now for chapter 1, and I think chapter 2, I've actually broken it into an overview and objectives, and then the chapter 1 study guide for some of the lessons, which I think are all of the lessons after chapter 2. It will just be a chapter. Oh, that's not true. I've got it there for chapter 4 too. For some of the lessons, it will be just a study guide, which will have the objectives at the start. Come on, load. And then the notes afterwards. This is the start of the term, so the internet is probably, not the internet, but the Clark College website is probably overloaded. This is not loading, so I'm not going to tell you. At the start, like I said, there will be the objectives, and then there will be the class notes. Let me go back to chapter 1. I'll just show you. Study guide. That will be the notes, and this will be all the information we're going to cover in the lecture, but this is in a text format. Any questions about any of that? So it'll be the same information we're covering in the lecture, just in a text format. After I've completed the lecture, I'll then put up the PowerPoint. But you're not going to get the PowerPoint until after the PowerPoint is finalized. The reason is students do much better if they take their own notes and then study from their own notes. So I'm forcing you not to simply print out my PowerPoint. I want you to take your notes and then study from your notes, because you'll do much better if you do it that way than just read my PowerPoint. So I'm actually making myself do more work so that you guys can learn the lesson better. And let me talk a little bit about students learning material. When a student or anybody is practicing something, how many times must they go over it before they will finally learn it? And we're talking about learning it near 100%. So when you're first learning a piece on the piano, or you're first like an Olympic athlete and you're first trying to do something in the Olympics, how many times do you have to repeat it before you will learn how to do it? Does anybody know? Anybody have a guess? Nobody's even going to guess, huh? Well, all of these studies, for some reason, have been done on middle school students, and they found that a middle school student has to repeat something 20 times before they will learn it. And that's transfer it from short-term memory into long-term memory. And for a grown adult who really wants to learn the material, you can learn it quicker than going over it 20 times. However, you do need to repeat it many times, something like 10 times, before you'll learn it with 100%. If you simply read the material, you will actually only remember and learn only 10% of the material. If you take notes, as well as obviously hear the material, you will learn 20% of the material, which isn't much better than simply listening alone or reading alone, but it is 2 times better. So take notes, and then you need to go over your notes time and time again before you will learn the material. Any question about that? All right. let me talk about some of the assignments. I've already mentioned the assignments that are due this week. There is an assignment for the lecture, which is also due this week. This is a discussion, and what you're going to be doing is answering a question in the lecture worksheet. And you do need to answer the question in the order the question is in the worksheet. So if you're the first person to log into the worksheet and start to answer the question, you will get question 1. And then question 2 will be answered by the second person who comes in. If you don't like, let's say you're the third person, provide an example of a scientific name, and you don't like that question, just skip it, let somebody else answer it, and then log in again, and then answer the next question which is available. And let's say 3 and 4 have been taken, and then you'll get question 5. You may not simply skip question 3 and say, oh, I like question 5, I'm going to answer question 5. If you do that, you will not get full credit. So the questions must be answered in the order they are in the worksheet. Otherwise, you will get a penalty, even if it's correct. And the reason is it's just way too difficult trying to determine what questions have been answered and what questions have not been answered unless you follow the order of the questions in the worksheet. Any question about any of that? All right, so you're warned. The first time you don't follow the order of the worksheet, I'll probably give you a warning. All other times you will not get full credit. You'll probably only get about 50% credit. Anyways, the point is you only need to answer about one question in each worksheet. And that's because in worksheet number 1, there's only 21 questions and there's 20 students about in the class. If there's more than 20 questions, I may ask you to answer 2 questions. Any questions about the lecture worksheet? And then you need to simply fill in the answers to the other students' answers to fill in the rest of the worksheet. So the lecture worksheet should be very easy. One disadvantage to the lecture worksheet is if you do not know the answer, you should look it up because you'll be answering at most 2 questions, usually 1 question. And if you get it wrong, then you're not going to get any points for that worksheet, or at least not full points for that worksheet. On the lab, the first time you get it wrong, I'll tell you on the first grading what questions you got wrong. And then you have another week to submit the lab again for the second grading. So in the lab, I consider the lab a learning exercise. You will have 2 attempts to get the correct answers. Any question about any of that? Of course, in the lab, you will be answering all the questions in the lab, not just 1 question or 2. There's an extra credit assignment. You should look on that. That's just submitting your picture. That is due by April 20th. There's the extra credit study sheet. Let me talk about that. I think I've got that here. Why is that looking that way? Yes. Well, I guess I'll have to go. No, it won't be above Clark. Guess I have to go to the internet to do that. That's too bad. right. Go ahead and enable editing so I can get it to change. On this worksheet, you need to submit your daily log schedule on the first tab, which marks schedule. And that's put everything you do from when you're awake. So when you get up in the morning, like 8 a.m., get up, eat breakfast. 10 a.m., go to work. 5 p.m., come home. 6, dinner. 7, 8, steady. We'll say steady micro. Oh, I don't know, watch TV, relax. And then 10 p.m., go to bed. So everything should be filled in. This will be work. We'll just say work. So almost everything should be filled in on the daily schedule. You'll get 3 points for turning that in. And if you don't want to say something specific, you can just say something general, like let's say instead of relax here, we're going to say spend time with family. You just say family time. Work is so general, I would hate to be more general than that. But like you said, eat breakfast, that's pretty general too. But you don't have to say that. You say get ready for the day or something like that. Just be general if you don't want to tell me the specifics. You may tell me the specifics. I mean, I'm not going to really even do more than this, except for I will compare for log 2. You need to put when you're studying for microbiology. And what did I say for that? On schedule 1 here. So I'll make sure it fits. And for log 2, I think it's 8 p.m. Come on. For Monday, that's the only time you're studying for micro. Uh, that's all you need to do for log 2. For log 2, this is for week 1, your study schedule for week 1. If week 1 will be the same study schedule you're going to be doing for all the other weeks, then state that up here. All weeks, something like that. Uh, log 2 is for week 2, if it's different from week 2 and any other weeks. And then log 3 for week 3, if it differs from weeks 1 and week 2. And you can just add more logs, more, what do you call it, tabs if you need to. Generally, I've never had a student who turned in more than 3 tabs. Most students will generally be putting all weeks in week 1, but you can do week 2. This is just your plan, steady schedule. I'm not going to hold you to it or anything like that. I'm not going to check. I will make sure that your steady schedule will fit your daily schedule, but beyond that, I'm not going to make any checks. You will get 3 points for turning in your daily schedule and 3 points for turning in your weekly schedule. For your weekly schedule, it does need to be independent of your daily schedule. Any question about any of that? And that's an extra credit assignment for a total of 6 points if it's done correctly. This one I think needs to be due this Saturday. Yep. I already talked about the Pelagie tutorial. That must be done by this Saturday and the Plagy quiz by this Saturday too. Any questions about the lecture webpage or the assignments? If not, let's talk a little bit about the syllabus. I've got on the syllabus the class. The last lecture is 6497. However, in microbiology, the lab is more important because that is where you'll get your grade in Canvas. That's where we turn it in, even though it's supposed to be worth 0 points, 0 credits, but you'll get your grade here. And what they're doing is they're requiring you to sign up for the lab, and maybe somebody can answer this. Once you register for the lab, is it automatic that you are registered for the lecture? Can somebody answer that?
Yes.
Thank you. That's what I thought it was. And then the times of the Zoom session. My email, I actually prefer you to send me email and Canvas. If you use the Canvas email, I will check it at least every other day, if not every day. Generally, Monday through Friday, I'll probably check it every day, if least not least every other day. If you submit it to jvolpe@clark.edu, I'll only check it at most twice a week, and sometimes only once a week. So if you want a quick reply, send it to the Canvas email. There's my office. I will not be going into campus, but I do have office hours. Office hours are made by arrangement. They're made online using Zoom. And we can do it after the lab. That's the easiest time to do it because you're logged on. We just wait for other students to log off. Or if you don't mind, we can talk after I'm done talking in the lab if you don't mind other students hearing it. I can shut off the recording, so it won't be recorded, but other students who are in Zoom will hear it. Unless we wait for all the students to log out. I'll let you read about the textbook, other resources. Let me do state that this class does have some optional textbooks, photographic atlas for microbiology. This book really helps with the lab, showing you photographs of the different tests in the lab. There's also the microbiology coloring book and the Get Ready for Microbiology. Chapter 3 is highly recommended. All of these optional texts are in the library in the course reserves, but they are optional texts you may buy. You do not need to buy them. You must buy the lecture text. You should know about Canvas. About the course description, the course outline, course policies. If you're ill, contact me and I'll help you keep track in the online class. Please contact me prior to any due dates to make arrangements for late work. This class is online, so if you're able to sit up, you probably should at least view it over the internet, if not during the Zoom session. Preparation for class. This class will be very busy. Try to read the material before the relevant session. At least you must read it before the quizzes. You should probably pre-read the lab before the lab. And then, of course, you should review the material before the quizzes. Attendance and participations after the first week, which I only take attendance in the lab. I will not be taking attendance. Participation is strongly recommended. I try to ask questions just to get some student involvement. Because of the hands-on nature of the lab, if you do not turn in more than 3 lab assignments, your grade will be reduced. Online quizzes do have a due date. They must be taken within 24 hours of the due date, generally before the due date. If missed, they may not be made up unless you make arrangements with me within about 24 hours of the quiz. After about 48 hours, the answers will show. Once the answers show online, you may not take the quiz late. So try to take the quizzes on time, and after 48 hours, you will not be allowed to take the quiz because the answers are showing. I'll let you read about wearing masks, student responsibilities. Students should pre-read the assignments, the handouts, bring them to class. Know the due dates of assignments. They're in Canvas. They're also in the Canvas calendar. It's your responsibility to obtain materials. If you miss a class, find out what you missed. You should keep all papers until the final grade is given. And that way, if there's a question, you can, show me the evidence. Students must abide by student code of conduct, especially when it applies to academic honesty issues. Cheating and plagiarism are not allowed. In school, cheating and plagiarism, if I discover you're either cheating or plagiarizing on that assignment, you get a 0 for that assignment. We're not really going to be having a lab, but if you were to go in a microbiology lab, all the laboratory safety rules must be followed. All interactions, student to student, student to instructor, and instructor to student should be cordial, businesslike, and professional. This includes all communications and emails. Instructor responsibilities, I'll try to respond to all Canvas emails within 48 hours. If you send it to my clark.edu email, I'm only going to try to respond within a half a week. I'll try to have all assignments graded within the first week of the due date. Note that there are 2 big assignments in this class, which I will not be able to do that because it will take me a week to grade these big assignments. And that's the infectious disease project and the lab report. So I'll try and get those done as soon as I can. Generally, those assignments are only completed during finals week, meaning with the lab report, it's turned in right before the lab week, finals week. And so generally I'll be working on it during finals week. And then this guideline only applies to the first grading of the lab. The second grading of the lab, I'll grade it whenever I have free time. It tends to be fairly late, meaning each week a student turns in another lab for that week. I will grade the first lab first. It will get higher priority than the second grading. Any questions about any of that? So the second grading, I'm not sure when I'll get it graded in the lab. Whenever I have free time, I'll get the second grading done. I'll let you read about course withdrawal, late assignments. I do accept late assignments. However, you cannot turn them into Canvas. You have to email me a late assignment. If an assignment is 1 day late, you get a 10% penalty. After that, you'll get a 50% penalty. And you may turn in assignments all the way until finals week. Once finals week begins, I no longer accept late assignments. Now, if you're sick and you make arrangements with me to turn in the assignment, I will change Canvas so that you may have an alternate due date, in which case when you turn it in by that due date, it will not be late. All right. I've already talked about plagiarism and cheating. If I find a student has plagiarized or cheated, you'll get a 0 for that assignment. With Zoom, follow the etiquette with Zoom. Be respectful and understanding of others in the class, even if you strongly disagree with them. If you do not, I reserve the right to kick you out of the class and reserve the right to escalate to a further response like file an official code of conduct violation. I've never done that, but I'll let you read about translation services. I'll talk a little bit about suggested study methods. Like most science classes, microbiology is challenging because you're going to learn a ton of new vocabulary. You're going to learn many new concepts. There's going to be several assignments due at the same time. You're going to feel stressed, especially in the middle of the term. This is normal. But many students report that microbiology is one of their most enjoyable classes. To alleviate some of the stress, please understand the commitment that you're about to take in taking this microbiology class. Let me blow that up so I can read it a little better. Our class normally requires about 3 hours of lecture plus 4 hours of lab each week. That's 7 hours per week in the class. Then you should also expect to spend 14 hours of time outside of class, plus the 7 hours of in class, for a total of 21 hours per week in the class. If external responsibilities prevent you from spending sufficient time on this class, it may be wise to consider taking the class during another quarter when you have more time to spend on the class. I'll let you read about comprehending fundamental principles. Some of the quiz question will be more than just memorize the answer. You'll need to comprehend fundamental principles and then derive an answer. One way to improve studying may be to determine what kind of learner you are. Are you a visual learner, an auditory learner, a reading, writing learner, a kinesthetic learner, or a multimodality learner? To find out, you can check your learning style by going to varklearn.com, answer the questionnaire. Here's a list of suggestions that may help you in your studying. Take on manageable chunks of material. If you're studying everything all at once, you're going to be learning too much unless you're brilliant or you have a photographic memory. Use concept mapping. Be organized. You're going to have several concurrent assignments. You may feel lost without proper proactive organization. Use the first 10 to 15 minutes before class to skim the previous class notes and then go over the upcoming class. This will help you remember where we left off and get you in the proper mindset for the current class. Come to class. This sounds simple, but many instructors, including yours, have noted a strong correlation between attendance, attitude, and grades. Obviously, quizzes will be covering material covered in the lecture. Listen in class. It sounds stupid to say, but many students tune out the instructor and just write notes. You need to listen as well as write notes. And then what you should do is take sketchy notes and then go over them within 24 hours. Preferably go over them immediately after the class because your short-term memory will disappear in 24 hours, and then you will not be able to add to the notes. So go over your notes within 24 hours as soon as you can, and then add to the notes. This will actually cut down your studying time because you will be hearing the material, writing notes, and then going over your notes. So that's 3 times you'll be getting the material, and that'll help you learn the material. Try active strategies like forming a study group online, quizzing study partners, writing mock questions. One of the best ways to learn is actually to teach. You will also get extra credit points starting in week 2 if you form an online study group and start quizzing each other. I forgot to mention that in the quizzing, in the online study group for this term, you do need to quiz each other. I'll need to change that. I need to update that. I haven't done it for this term yet. All right, let's talk about the grading. The plagiarism quiz will be 20 points. I already mentioned that. You'll have 5 quizzes. Each of them are at 75 points. What is that? 375 points. But your lowest quiz will be dropped. So the quizzes will only be worth 300 points total. I will record each of your quizzes on Canvas. So the quiz will be there and will count to your total. And then I'll have the lowest quiz score in the drop-down column. It'll be a negative number to subtract the lowest quiz. I prefer this system rather than put a 0 in your lowest quiz or erase it. And that way, if I make a mistake, I've got everything recorded so I can easily change the grade back. And I've only made a mistake one time early on in my teaching days at Clark, but like I said, I prefer this method. It's more complex, but everything is recorded, and if a mistake is made, it can be easily corrected. The quizzes all require Respondus Lockdown Browser, except for an extra credit quiz and Final A does not require Respondus Lockdown Browser, and that's because they're essay questions. There will be 1 worksheet per lab for a total of 50 points. Most of the labs are worth 5 points. However, the first 2 labs are only worth 2.5 points. The lecture, there will be about 1 for each lecture for a total of 25 points. I think each one is worth 2.5, so there's 10 of them. There will be the identification of the unknown bacteria report for 75 points in a lab project. We'll talk more about that later. Then there's the infectious disease research project. That's a 100-point lab project. I'll talk more about that later. And then there will be a cumulative final exam worth 150 points. Any question about any of that? So there's the total breakdown. 20 points for the plagiarism quiz, 300 points for the quizzes. Remember, you get to drop the lowest grade on the quiz. Lowest quiz, there will be 50 points in the lab, 75 points for the identification of the unknown project, 100 points for the infectious disease project, 25 points for the lecture worksheets, 150 points for the final, out of a total of 720 points. There will also be 20 extra credit points. I've already talked about 2 of them. Your grading scale, if you get higher than 92%, you'll get an A. Higher than 90%, you'll get an A minus. Higher than 88%, a B plus. Higher than 82%, a B. Higher than 80%, a B minus. A C plus is higher than 78%. A C higher than 70%. There is no C minus given in this class. There is no D plus or D minus. A D is over 60%, and then under 60% will be an F. Canvas does give a grade scale. It's slightly different. So the Canvas grade scale could differ from the actual grade you'll get in the class. Any question about that? All right. I'll let you read about question review and written corrections, microscope use in the lab and the virtual labs, support for student services. I'll let you read about that. Other services. If you want to know what the enrollment dates are, like when's the last day to drop the class and get a full refund, I think it's 5 p.m. this Friday, but don't quote me on that. Go look it up. After that, if you were to leave the class, we'd call that a withdrawal, and you'll get a W on your transcript, and you'll have to pay for the class. This class does have a tutor, and there's a virtual support center, as well as the Show Me video pages. So, and I think this term you could also walk into the tutoring center during certain hours and speak to the tutor directly. I'll let you read about reasonable accommodations for religion or conscience, using camera on Zoom, important college-wide student information, translation services. Let me state that this class is online, so even if the college is closed, I will generally have class. The only time I would not have class is if the internet goes down or Clark College's internet goes down. That actually happened last term where Clark College's internet went down, so nobody, including me, could log into Zoom because you have to get permission by logging into Clark to log into Zoom, and it's just a mess. It used to be that you could log in directly to the class through Zoom or through the college, and you can't do that anymore. So if the college internet goes down, this class is not going to be meeting. I'll let you read about the non-discrimination policy, school emergency procedures, safety information for students and physicians. I'll talk a little bit about that in the lab. Words of advice and comfort. Sometimes it seems like your instructors are your enemies. It's true that we must maintain standards so that we cannot always accommodate you. However, you should know that we all want you to succeed, and that one of the greatest joys of teaching is actually interacting with you, our students, getting to know you and helping you achieve your academic goals. So if you have a problem, a complaint, or a concern, come and discuss it with us. The earlier, the better. Don't let them fester. They usually only get worse if they fester. Also, because of COVID-19 and other issues, I understand this class will have a lot of stress. And I'll keep this fact in mind. We'll try and do my best to help you enjoy the class, be successful, and maybe you'll even have some fun in the class. Any questions about any of that? The lab safety rules we'll talk about in the lab. And then at the end of this syllabus, I've got the schedule for lecture 1. We're going to talk about the syllabus, the technology session. We've already done that. Tips for success, we've already done that. And then talk about chapter 1, the microbial world in you, and a little bit about chapter 10, the classification of microorganisms. If you have the online version of the current textbook, it'll be pages 264 to 272. If you have an older version of the textbook, you may use the older version, but you'll have to figure out what the pages will be. It will be the same area, the classification of microorganisms. On the left, we have the lecture schedule, obviously the dates, and then on the right, the laboratory schedule. Any question about the schedule? On the schedule, I have, oops, why did I lose that? The important dates listed for something that's turned in, like practice quiz 00 is due Wednesday of April 16th, so that'll be about April 17th, covering chapter 1, lab 0, and lab 1, as well as the syllabus. Then quiz 1 is going to be April 24th, quiz 2, etc. And then when important assignments are due, like the infectious disease paper is due 11:59 p.m. Saturday, May 18th. Do realize that generally each week you will be having a lecture and a lab assignment, and that's not shown on the schedule. And that those assignments, the worksheets will be due generally at Saturday at 11:59 p.m. There is an exception, and the exception is stated in the syllabus. Both labs for week 1, meaning lab 0, 0 and lab 01, they are due at 8 a.m. Friday, April 12th. And if you do not turn those in on time, you will be dropped from the class. Any question about any of that? Any questions about the syllabus or the schedule? All right, if not, let's continue for about 20 more minutes on chapter 1.
I have one question. So for like the discussion, the worksheet, lectures or the lecture worksheets, if for some reason we accidentally comment at the same time as someone else, will you just reach out to one of those people and tell them to do like the next available question?
No, what you need to do is after you submit your lecture worksheet answer, you should look at it and see if you're the next one to submit it. And if somebody beat you to it, then you need to submit another question, another answer.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
So I won't look at the worksheet until it's time to grade it. And like I said, once you submit your answer, you should always look to see that, first of all, it's been submitted correctly. And take a look and make sure that you're the one who will get credit for it. Because if somebody beats you to it, they'll get credit for it and you will not.
Okay, that sounds
Okay.
good.
All right. Microbiology, chapter 1 includes the microbiology world and you, which is chapter 1, and chapter 10. I've got the reading for chapter 10 for the current version of the textbook on the left, and actually for the, what do you call it, the second version of the textbook made for Clark College. That's the second version, not right here, in the custom textbook. Generally, I'll have the first slide giving you the major goals and the rough outline. The major goals are the major objectives. For all of the objectives, you need to come and take a look at the objectives for all of them. So I only give you the main ones. Where are we? that down. Oh, here it is. But the first slide, I give you the major goals and a rough outline. Know the terms always on each chapter. We'll begin talking about actually the importance of microbes, and then we'll talk about these different terms, and then we'll talk about a brief history of microbiology. When discussing the importance of microbes, let me blow this up. We're going to talk about the nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen can start in the atmosphere as nitrogen gas. Nitrogen can be fixed by bacteria and archaea into an organic compound. When the bacteria and archaea then decompose, die and then decompose, they usually will be decomposed by bacteria, but also by archaea and fungi. And then the organic compound will be broken down into ammonia, which can be converted into ammonium ions. That can go into the soil, and green plants can use ammonia or ammonium, but they don't like it. They can use it. It's actually, if you get too much of it, it'll kill the plant, but they can use it. The ammonia can be converted by bacteria and archaea and nitrification to nitrite. The nitrite can be converted to nitrate by bacteria, and the nitrate can be converted by bacteria and archaea into nitrogen in the atmosphere. And then I should mention nitrate is the form of nitrogen that green plants love. If you look at any plant fertilizer, a main ingredient will be nitrate. And then green plants can take this nitrate and make an organic compound once again, and the whole cycle then can continue. The nitrogen can be converted into organic compounds, which will then decompose, etc. So that the nitrogen cycle recycles, moves from one position in the ecosystem to another, and that's why it's called the nitrogen cycle. The importance of microbes in the nitrogen cycle is wherever we have a red arrow, this step of the nitrogen cycle is happening because of a microbe. So there are a few steps that don't use a microbe, like the nitrogen coming to green plants in the soil, doesn't use a microbe. The green plants converting nitrogen into an organic compound. But all of the other steps use a microbe. And so microbes are critical for the functioning of the nitrogen cycle. Any question about any of that? The point is we wouldn't have the nitrogen cycle without microbes. So microbes are important in the nitrogen cycle. In the making of soil, microbes are also important in making soil. There are some microbes which actually obtain their nutrients from rocks, and they break down the rocks, leading to the formation of soil. Now, it is not the main way that soil is made. Soil is mostly made from erosion, from either wind or water, eroding the rock and making soil. But a significant portion of this rock can be made into soil, about 20%. And so microbes are important in the making of soil. Any question about any of that? When we look at the atmospheric oxygen, we'll note that oxygen in the history of the Earth has changed. Only at present day do we have oxygen at 21%. Before that, oxygen levels were reduced. And before that, before about 2.7 billion years ago, there was no oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere. So for the first, I don't know, 1.8 billion years, Is that years ago or present day? I think that's 4.6 billion years ago. So 2.7 billion years ago. Before that, there was no oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere. What happened here is we had microbes evolve, cyanobacteria, that made oxygen as a waste product, and the oxygen was released into the atmosphere, bringing the atmosphere up to about 5%. That allowed ozone to form in the Earth's atmosphere, blocking UV light, which allowed the evolution of green plants. And then green plants and microbes brought the Earth's oxygen to about 21%. And actually, only about 50% of the Earth's current oxygen is from green plants. About 50% is from microbes, meaning microbes were essential and are essential to the Earth's level of oxygen in the atmosphere. Any question about any of that? And here we have a sewage treatment plant. Humans are responsible for generating and breaking down the waste, right? Meaning we generate the waste when we drain stuff down our sink and flush our toilets. That's where that comes from, right? And then humans break it down, right? That's why we built these plants for breaking down the waste, right? Anyone disagree? Anyone agree? Well, you guys aren't going to contribute. I'll tell you the answer this time, but not always am I going to tell you the answer. And that is humans do not break down the organic matter that flushes down our toilets and our sink. We only build the, I don't know, pools and the vats. It's microbes in the pools and the vats that break down the waste, breaking down the waste into CO2 and water. So we've talked about microbes. Let's mention that microbes are organisms which are too small to be seen with the unaided eye. They're generally single-celled. They are many shapes and sizes. They include bacteria, archaea, all yeast, most molds, all protozoans, some algae, viruses, and prions. The last two, the viruses and prions, are special because these are not cellular organisms. I don't like calling them microorganisms because they're not an organism. Viruses and prions, they are a microbe, but they are not a cellular organism. And I don't call them microorganisms, but other people do. So you're going to have to get used to that. You should just know they do not have cells. They're not cellular. They are a collection of chemicals, actually. Prion may be just one protein, and a virus may be proteins and nucleic acid. They may also have lipids. Some have lipids, but not all do. And the point is, they do not have cells. They're not cells. So they are special microbes. Algae, let me talk a little bit about that. If it's microscopic, meaning you can't see it with your naked eye, it is a microbe. But the algae that grows up, washes ashore on the Oregon and Washington beaches, like kelp, that's not a microbe. You can see it. Any question about any of that? Microbes are almost everywhere, so we can call them the ubiquity of microorganisms because we can find them almost everywhere on the planet Earth. They play many beneficial roles in numerous processes. And numerically, microbes are the most abundant life forms on the planet Earth. Now, I've talked a little bit about a cell. Let's talk specifically about what a cell is. A cell is the basic structural and functional unit of all organisms. A cell is a highly organized compartment bounded by a thin, flexible structure that we call the plasma membrane or the cell membrane. All cells contain three components. Obviously, they have the plasma membrane, they have cytoplasm, and then they have DNA. If we're looking at these pictures, where in the picture do we have life? Where in the picture do we not have life? So do we have life on the plants? Life in the water? Do we have life on the rocks around the water? Anyone have guess? I'm not going to answer to this one, so you guys are going to have to guess.
Yes.
All right. How about in the ocean water? Do we have life?
Yeah.
Yes.
How about in the air above the ocean water?
Yes.
Yeah, we have microbes in the air above either the surface of the water or the surface of the land. Up about a mile, we can find microbes blowing in the wind. Above a mile, you don't really find the microbes, but up to a mile in the air, you can find microbes. How about in the soil underneath the ground? Do we find microbes in the soil?
Yes.
Yeah, you find microbes underneath the ground, meaning the surface, or underneath the surface of the ocean. You can go down about a mile and you can find microbes. And that's assuming that the soil is soil and or ocean sediment, meaning that it's not rock. If it's rock, you might not be able to go down a mile and find microbes, but if it's soil or ocean sediment, you can find, go down about a mile and find microbes. Obviously on the cat and the person, there's microbes on both of their skin. How about on the wall there? Are there microbes? It's either a yes or no.
I think on the wall, yes.
Yes, you have microbes on the wall. How about in the desert sands of the Sahara? You have microbes?
Yes.
Yes. Where in this picture would you not have microbes? I'll tell you, that's a volcanic vent there. That's lava. Do you have microbes on the rocks surrounding the volcanic vent?
Yes.
Yes. You don't have microbes in one place, and that's where the lava is. It's too hot for microbes to exist there. But everywhere else we'll have microbes. And we're talking about every inch, every cubic centimeter. So where is everywhere? Environments where microorganisms are found on the land and in the water, in the atmosphere. And like I said, that's up about a mile in the atmosphere, down in the soil about a mile. Subsurface, on all plants and animals, we have microbes. Essentially, wherever liquid water is present and temperatures are between a minus 20 degrees Celsius and 120 degrees Celsius. Remember, boiling water boils at 100 degrees Celsius, and we have microbes above boiling water. Below this temperature, you will have microbes, but they'll be frozen, in which case they're not metabolically active if they're frozen. They are alive, but they will not be metabolically active if they're frozen. The deepest place on the planet Earth, the Marianas Trench, water boils at something like 126 degrees Celsius, and we found microbes. So actually it's 126 degrees Celsius. Microbes living at 126 degrees Celsius. How many microorganisms are present? In 1 gram of soil, we have about 1 times 10 to the 8th microbes. Now, this will depend on how much moisture is in the soil, how much organic matter is in the soil. So this is sort of an average, like the soil in Western Washington or Oregon at the moment will have about 1 times 10 to the 8th microbes per gram of soil. If you had wetter soil with more organic matter, you'd have more microbes. If you have drier soil, like the soil of the Sahara Desert, you will have fewer microbes. In a milliliter of ocean water, do you have more or less microbes than you have in 1 gram of soil? Anyone have a guess?
More.
No, actually, the oceans are considered a desert on the planet. You have less. In 1 gram of human feces, do you have more or less? Anyone have a guess?
More.
More. Obviously, this will depend on how fresh the feces is, but generally, we have more if the feces is fresh. One human being, we have much more than 1 times 10 to the 8th. And the entire planet Earth, we have much more also. So let's talk about the numbers. In 1 milliliter or 1 gram of ocean water, you only have about 1 times 10 to the 6 microbes. So you have less than in 1 gram of soil. Like I said, the oceans are a desert on the planet Earth, and they have less nutrients, less microbes. Soil, if it's fairly wet, has abundance of microbes. But like I said, if you were to look at the soil in the Sahara Desert, you'd only have about 1 times 10 to the 6 microbes per gram of soil. Human feces, if it's fresh, especially if it's liquid feces, you have about 1 times 10 to the 11th microbes per 1 gram of human feces. And that's actually 55% of the wet weight of the fecal matter. So 55% of the wet weight of feces is actually microbes. Obviously, if you had a fecal matter that's you find in the Sahara Desert and it's been dried out, you'll have much less, and you would have down to 1 times 10 to the 6 microbes per gram. But most of us don't go to the bathroom in the Sahara Desert, so we'll have around 10 to the 11th. One human, we've got about 3.8 times 10 to the 13th microbes in and on us. On the entire Earth, we have 1 nonillion microbes. That is 1 with 30 zeros after it. For comparison, the human population is around 8 billion. Much smaller than a nonillion. Any questions? All right, if not, I think I'll stop here and I will see you in the lecture, in the lab, sorry, in about 10 minutes. Any questions?
Is the lab in the same Zoom meeting?
No, it'll be in a separate Zoom meeting. I emailed you that. It'll be in the bottom page of the email. You can also get to it from Canvas website. right, if there's no further questions, I'm going to log out. I'll see you in the lab.